and that you've got water and support and pace leaders and all of those good things. So welcome everybody. Last week, for those of you who were here, you heard Coach Reggie talk to us about the basics of aerobic training, sort of the fundamentals of why we're doing the training the way we do. So in our continuing effort to get you the skill sets you need, the basic skills you need to be successful in completing the LA Marathon, we want to start our series on nutrition. And because nutrition is so important, we will have 4 clinics on nutrition throughout our training program, because it's the fuel that makes your body go. And without the fuel, it's just like your car. Your body's not going to go if it's not fueled properly. We're very lucky to have Julie Vuksic, who is our nutritionist for the club. Julie's been doing this for about 4 years for us now, I think. Yeah, Julie is a registered dietitian and she's certified in sports nutrition. She has worked with clients over the years in a number of different programs on weight management issues and training for athletes. She consults with a bunch of different organizations and groups on just the kind of stuff we're going to be talking about here today. And she knows her stuff because she's one of us. She's an athlete as well. She has done 10K, she has done marathon, she has done Ironman distance races, she's done the Boston Marathon, so she knows her stuff, and she knows what we as distance athletes need. So today she's going to talk to us about the basics of fueling and hydration. I will turn it over to Julie.
Thank you. This is exciting to have a microphone. Usually I yell, so if I yell on the microphone, just quiet down. It's great to be here. Congratulations to all of you who are starting on this journey. I started endurance sports, I think it was 1999, dating myself, and I became addicted. So, and I actually went into the field of dietetics because I felt passionate about sports and nutrition. So it's great to be here today, and I'm going to share some personal experience, and of course the applied science, and encourage you to take what makes sense for you. Everything that I share today is based off of science, and then I want to give you practical examples of how to apply that to your training. So David hit the nail on the head when he mentioned just fueling your body. You got to think about a car. So you guys are setting out on a journey to walk and run great distances. And so you certainly wouldn't want to head out to Vegas, right, with an empty tank. So think about it logically that way. There's 2 main goals for endurance athletes when it comes to fueling. And that is to avoid becoming hydrated, so to stay well hydrated, and to avoid low blood sugar. So we're going to start off talking about hydration first, and the reason for that is if you're not well hydrated, your nutrition's going to fall apart. Oftentimes I'll have athletes tell me, you know what, I don't tolerate eating anything, while I'm exercising, and oftentimes it's because they're not well hydrated. So we're going to cover that one first and then get into fueling during your activity. Today we're going to, everything that I mentioned, I recommend practice during training. You never want to do anything new on race day. That's something you'll probably hear me say every time I come out here. And the reason for that is the tried and true works. You don't want to have any surprises the day of your event that you've been training so hard for. So you're putting a lot of time and effort into this and energy, and if we don't pay attention to our nutrition, you're not going to reach your full potential. So we're really aiming for peak performance to your planned nutrition. So when it comes to hydration, just show of hands, how many of you are thirsty right now? Am I the only one? Okay. The only one that's dehydrated right now. It's natural, right? We're not drinking during the night, so it's likely that for the most part, we're going to wake up thirsty. So first and foremost, you want to listen to your thirst on your day-to-day when it comes to nutrition, especially where we live, right? It's hot, it's dry, it's actually been humid, so we're probably losing more fluid the way the weather's been in recent weeks. But ideally, we're keeping well hydrated throughout the day. Just little prompts to think about: carrying a water bottle with you, having it on your desk at work, in your car. That's going to really help to facilitate hydration, as well as eating a lot of vegetables and fruits. Those foods are high in water content, so that contributes to your overall water intake. How about drinking before, during, and after your training? How many of you make it a habit of getting some fluids in before you go out to exercise? Fantastic. I, as an endurance athlete, when I first got starting out, even though I was a dietitian, I wasn't as experienced in sports nutrition, I would guzzle water. And then I find myself in the porta potty. I remember at the start line of the LA Marathon, it was actually shortly after 9/11, and there were security issues, and they had us waiting almost 45 minutes to an hour before our start actually got delayed about 45 minutes. And I was panicked. I'm in the corral and I have to go to the bathroom and can't find a porta potty anywhere. And I learned over the years that hydrating, but not over-hydrating before you start, can be very beneficial. So see, some of you are holding water bottles, but a 16-ounce water bottle is perfect, about 2 to 3 hours before you start your event. And the beauty of this is it's going to hydrate you as long as you're keeping well hydrated, day to day up into that, but you're not going to overdo it. So you have enough time to go to the bathroom, so you're not stopping, right, continuously during your run. The other thing to think about, the reason for this, why we're keeping well hydrated. Water is actually the most important nutrient for an athlete. 60 to 70% of our body weight is water. And when we exercise, our body can generate up to 20 times more heat. And so obviously the water helps to dissipate that through sweat. If you lose more than 2% of your body weight in water, it can negatively impact performance. So some of you may have experienced that in the past when you've been exercising when you're dehydrated, that it feels crummy. Our heart rate goes up, you feel like you're working harder than you are. Also, if your heart rate goes up prematurely before you're really working that hard and you start losing more water, you also burn through your glycogen stores. So you may be more likely to hit the wall. When we're dehydrated, our digestive tract slows down, our stomach emptying slows down, so that's where you might run into problems where you're not tolerating perhaps the gels or bars or different nutrition products that you might be taking when you start doing longer runs and longer walks. So with that, how do we prevent that from happening? Getting that 16 ounces before, and then about 10 to 15 minutes before, another 6 to 8 ounces of water can be really beneficial, so about a cup of water, or sport drink, and we'll kind of get into that in just a moment. How about hydrating during? Anyone carry water with them or sport drink while they're running? Awesome. Or walking. This is beneficial, and you may be wondering, how much do I take? And there's a lot of information out there, and you may be a little bit nervous. You've heard of overhydrating. We call it at risk for what they call hyponatremia if we take in too much water during running, and that lowers our sodium levels in our blood. So there's symptoms of dehydration while you're out training, out running, walking, and they're similar to overhydrating as well. So you may find that you feel fatigued, maybe nauseous, having different symptoms like that. So to prevent either over drinking and under drinking, there's guidelines. And general guidelines say taking 6 to 8 ounces every 15 minutes can be beneficial, but we're all individuals, right? And there's different weather conditions. Last week, for example, compared to this week. And so our hydration needs can vary. And I will tell you, as your fitness improves, your sweat rate response improves. You become more efficient at dissipating that heat. So you may find that you're sweating more and more the more well-trained you become. So there is a way that you can personalize your hydration plan during your runs, and it's called measuring your sweat rate. Has anyone heard of that before? Sweat rate? It's not like normal conversation at the water cooler, I guess, technically. And this is something you want to do in the privacy of your home. But measuring your sweat rate, simply you weigh yourself before you go out for an hour of your exercise. If you usually walk or run, and try to run at the general training pace that you've been going at. When you're out running or walking, you'll want to pay attention to how much you drink. So you bring a water bottle with you and end up estimating or even measuring how much you took. And then when you get back, you'll take off your sweaty clothes, towel off, and weigh yourself again. The idea is that, let's say in that hour you lost a pound of body weight and you drank 8 ounces. So you add the two together, pound, 16 ounces, plus 8 ounces, you're looking at, 24 ounces of water lost. Now the goal isn't to replace 100%. If you do, fantastic, but rarely do we, right? We're out there running, you take a water cup at the aid station, some splashes on your face, some is on the ground, on your clothes. I mean, ideally it's going in our body, right? At the aid station, dumping it on our head is not going to be as efficient as putting it in your body, so I will say that. Maybe you take one to do one of each. But the idea is that you're trying to avoid losing more than 2% of your body weight during the time that you're out there training. So once you get this general guideline, let's say it's that 24 ounces that you lost in that hour, divide that by 4, you're aiming for approximately 6 ounces every 15 minutes during your exercise. A gulp of water, a mouthful of water is about an ounce. So that gives you a better kind of idea of what you're gauging for. Again, it's trial and error. You want to practice with it, but this gives you a more specific idea of how much you need while you're training. Now, many athletes ask me, do I need sport drink? When you're exercising anywhere greater than 90 minutes or 60 to 90 minutes, it can be beneficial, particularly when it's warm outside, to incorporate sodium. Sport drinks are great for that. They have sodium chloride and other electrolytes in it, as well as carbohydrate. And when it comes to fueling, so taking in calories, particularly from carbohydrate during exercise, it's recommended for improved performance to take carbohydrate in when you are exercising for greater, again, than 60 to 90 minutes. So you can see kind of a combination where that's where the sport drink can really be beneficial, because you're kind of killing 3 birds with 1 stone. You're getting carbohydrates in, you're getting fluids, as well as electrolytes. What I do recommend when you're training for a race is going to the website and looking what sport drink is going to be available on the course. So you can practice with it, see if you like it or not. If you don't like it or you don't tolerate it, you can always have your own plan to carry your own or have family members or friends at different mile markers so you can get another water bottle from them. The great thing about the club is they do provide usually the drink that's going to be on the course for the course that you're training for. So for LA this year, it's endurance formula, Gatorade and lemon lime. So hopefully you guys will be able to practice with that for that particular race. But again, I know many of you train for different events, so it's always helpful to check that out and experiment and practice with what's available. In a moment, I'm going to talk about fueling and taking in calories. The calories that you take in don't necessarily have to be from sport drink, but we do want to be mindful of the electrolytes that you're needing to get in. So I'll cover that in just a moment when we also talk about sports nutrition products and when you're taking in food. When it comes to the aid stations as well, you want to kind of be thinking about your plan as you approach it and you're taking that fluid in. So you want to be practicing. You can always pinch your cup so you're able to get the fluid in without it splashing everywhere. But again, everything that you're doing, you want to be practicing in your longer walks and runs when it comes to that hydration. How about afterwards? Are you making it a habit of hydrating after you exercise? Of course, it's been really warm, so our thirst is helping to facilitate that. Research supports that we should try to get 20 to 24 ounces of fluid for every pound that you lose in body weight after exercise. Shorter workouts, less than an hour, it's naturally going to happen if we're hydrating, throughout the day. But your longer runs, when you get home, weigh yourself and see. It's going to give you a better indicator of how well you're doing with your hydration. We can lose anywhere from a pound to 3 pounds of body weight in water when you're training the higher intensity and the heat and humidity. So you want to keep tabs on that and get an idea, gosh, how am I doing with my hydration? There is, of course, these guidelines, and then there's reality of how much you sweat, how much you're able to tolerate. So the more you can practice and get your handle on that, you're going to be in a better position to feel your best, and you're also going to be in a much better position to tolerate the fueling that you're going to be taking in during your runs as well. So before I jump into the fueling piece, any questions on the hydration that I covered? I know it's a lot of info. The good news is we have this all in writing for you on a handout on the table towards the exit of the parking lot, and then also Dave is going to be emailing the materials out to you this week, so you'll have this all in writing.
And Julie, I'll just remind everybody, and particularly folks who are brand new, so the club provides water and sports drinks on the longer run days, but water always here at the school. We also have aid stations, water stations out on the course. So you can carry your own water if you'd like, but we actually have aid stations out on the course about every 2 miles or so. So about fitting into that 15-20 minute range so you can get your fueling needs met out on the course without having to carry water with you each week.
Such a great benefit, I have to say. I hate carrying stuff, but the reality is, sometimes we have to do that, right? If we don't have I call it a catered, I love races, they're like a catered training day, especially with triathlon. It's the best. Okay, so the next piece, fueling. How many of you eat something before you go out for your runs or walks? Okay. If you don't, we're going to talk about kind of some solutions or some ideas around it. We all have different reasons for why we do the things or the things we've done to date. What I will say is that the higher intensity your exercise or the longer the duration. So many of you are out here training for your first marathon or maybe first half marathon, and you may have felt fine when you've exercised in the past, for an hour or less. The longer your bout or the higher the intensity, the greater impact your nutrition is going to have on your performance. So this is something, if you haven't been doing, I encourage you to consider doing. And there's really a few main reasons, similar to the hydration, the benefits that we get for dissipating heat. Actually, I didn't go into all of them. There's others, transporting nutrients, cushioning our joints in terms of hydration. For fueling in the morning, especially if you're training earlier on in the day, if you're running later in the afternoon, I know most races do start in the morning, by eating, you're topping off your glycogen stores. We have a limited supply of carbohydrate in our body, and that's our primary fuel source as athletes. And so if we start an event depleted, we're going to be in a position, a compromised position to feel your best and to be able to perform. So having something to eat beforehand is going to help to do that. It's also going to give you peace of mind. It can settle your stomach. So many benefits to getting that. Now, carbohydrates also our primary fuel source for our brains. And I have talked to athletes where they've shared, I've had trouble concentrating at points in a longer event. I've also kind of started with, what's my name? It's maybe a dramatization here, but I kid you not, I have had people say that to me. And carbohydrates are a primary fuel source for our brains. And so to keep your central nervous system, right, we need to be able to concentrate, especially when we're digging in deep. A lot of this is mental in the latter stages of the race. You want to be feeling your best. So fueling early on is going to be important, and then also fueling often How many of you, though, have a concern you've had trouble tolerating food before? You can feel food bouncing in your stomach when you eat. That's a common one I hear as well. So the timing and the type of foods that we eat are going to be important. On the handout, you'll see I have a lot of numbers, and I apologize that I'm a very number-driven person, and I want to make sure that people have the information to make decisions and to experiment with what works best for you. But the science says that getting 1 to 4 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram body weight 1 to 4 hours before training. So if you think about it, if you're having a heavier meal, you want to have it farther out. That gives you more time for the food to digest. The other thing to think about is you want to avoid foods that are typically, again, there's individuals who can tolerate things and it surprises me, but ideally, if we're avoiding foods that are higher in fat, fat takes longer to digest. So you may have found some foods sit like a rock in your stomach. I think someone said they had a donut right before throwing this morning. That might be something that we don't tolerate quite as well as maybe even a bagel because that is lower in fat. But the ideal nutrients and what science supports is rich in carbohydrate, moderate in protein, maybe even a little bit fat. That helps to satiate us and is going to help us to feel full and satisfied. But we want to avoid feeling overly full, right? Because when we're running, there's a lot of jostling happening there. Just want to make sure that we're getting that feel, but we tolerate it well. I always say tried and true, practice, particularly on your longer training days, to figure out what feels best for you. But some examples might be yogurt, fruit, maybe a banana and a bagel with light peanut butter. Oatmeal's a real popular one with a lot of the athletes I work with maybe a little bit of low-fat milk and some berries. So again, it really depends on what works best for you. If you don't tolerate solid food, another idea to consider, in addition to eating farther out to give your body time to digest, would be a liquid meal. So maybe having more solid food earlier on. I have some athletes who will wake up, set the alarm, eat breakfast, go back to bed for about an hour and a half, get back up, and then run. Again, something you don't need to do for workouts that are less than an hour, but for your key, when you get up to training and you're running 17, 18, miles and more, you may find it worthwhile to do that. The day of the race, you're going to be up early anyway. By the time you get up and you get to the start and drive, it's like, hey, you can practice and see what's going to work best for you. Liquid empties the stomach faster than solid, so if you do have trouble tolerating solid food, you may find a liquid meal replacement like Ensure or Boost. There's a lot of, even a smoothie works well for you, so those are some other ideas to consider. How about fueling during exercise? That's a question I get as well, and it's recommended for performance anything greater than 60 to 90 minutes to take 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. You're probably thinking, what is that? It could be a banana. It would be about, the large banana is about 30 grams of carbohydrate. It also could be different sports nutrition products. You see them, they're pretty much everywhere now, but at running stores as well, even at the grocery store. But sport gels, even nutrition bars, there's sport beans, blocks, goos, all kinds of stuff out there. And again, keeping in mind tolerance, usually 1 packet can work well, but science shows up to 2. Really depends on what works well for you, and the calorie range ends up being about 120 to maybe up to 300 calories per hour. Again, I would recommend starting light, seeing how you do, starting on the lower end, and if you tolerate and feel you need more, you can do more and kind of practice with that. Now, I have had athletes say, I do not tolerate eating anything. Sometimes it's experimenting with the different products that are out there. Most often, science supports a mixture of different types of carbohydrates better absorbed because of the transport mechanism in the digestive tract. So food certainly can work. For the walkers, you may find that you find that more satiating. You're out there longer, so actually having food doesn't necessarily have to be a designer nutrition product. Those products are really meant to be out there to facilitate a quick digestion for a quick source of energy, and also portability. So if you do prefer to have a pineapple, that's absolutely fine. You just may not want to run with that, So it really, it's to each their own in terms of what works best. Another thing to think about when you're taking these nutrition products that are rich in carbohydrate is to take them with fluid. That can be a mass amount of carbohydrate that goes straight to your intestine, through your stomach and to your digestive tract, and that can cause some distress, cramping, diarrhea. So, sorry, TMI, as a dietitian, I talk about that kind of stuff, is getting a lot of fluid with that, getting your water to help facilitate the digestion and avoid any distress with that. How many of you take something to eat after your exercise? Or heard of the window of opportunity, right? Yeah, all of us, right? Yeah, we're going out to eat brunch after this. So there's a difference, again, the type of fuel that you get after your workouts. As you get into your longer distance training, our immune systems can actually become suppressed. There's a lot of benefits for health, of course, being active, but we're moving into the flu season, and I will say that, benefits around fueling after your workouts, and particularly in the first 30 minutes, we have a window of opportunity where our cells are more apt to take in that nutrition and replete your glycogen stores, that stored form of carbohydrate. So if we're able